Welcome everyone. Today we will learn how to declare variables in JavaScript. A variable is a container to store data in memory. We can declare JavaScript variables using var, let, and constant keywords. Var is the only way of declaring variables in JavaScript before it exists. These variables don't have to be initialized when you declare them. If we define a value property and print the result, it will have an undefined value. Var variables can be accessed before declaration. If we move console.log to the top, we have the same undefined value. Why? Because var variables are hoisted to the top and are initialized with an undefined value. But what is hoisting? Hoisting is a JavaScript mechanism where variables and function declarations are moved to the top of their scope before code execution. Var declarations are globally scoped or function scope. This value property is globally scoped. But what is scope? It defines the limits where the variable is accessible. For instance, in this scenario, the variable is globally scoped, so it's accessible in the entire JavaScript execution environment. However, if we define a function and we declare a var variable with the same name, print the result, and invoke the function, we have a total different value because this second value property is available and can be accessed only with that function. For instance, if we rename this property and we try to access outside the scope within, we have an exception, a reference error, because within is not defined in the global scope. Var variables can also be redeclared. If we redeclare the value variable in this global scope, it's totally acceptable and possible. Print result. We can redeclare var variables anytime and as many times as possible. Remove this code. The second type of variable in JavaScript is let. It's one of the new features of exist for declaring variables. Let cannot be accessed before declaration. If we try to do the same thing as var, we will have an uncaught reference error. We cannot do the same. A let variable cannot be redeclared within its scope. If we try to redeclare the same variable, we cannot do that. It will throw a syntax error. But within its scope, if we define a function and declare a let property with the same name, we can do it. It's possible. Print the result. Let me move this console.log to the second line and invoke the main function. As you can see, we can do it. Let variables are block scope. What is block scope? Anything with curly braces is a block. So let variables can be declared in different scopes. We have the global scope, which we define the first value property. We have a new let variable property within that function. It's totally possible, but is defined within its scope. Okay, if we declare an if statement, we can create a new let variable and define a different value because it's in a different scope. Print the result. It works. Remove this code. And the second type of variables in JavaScript are constant. Is another new feature of exist to declare constants. Constants must be initialized during declaration. Unlike let and var, you cannot do that. Declaring a variable without initializing. We have an uncaught mission initializer error. With constant values, we have to define the value. Print the result. So far so good. Like let, these constant variables cannot be accessed before declaration. Okay, we have a reference error section, and it's also block scope. If we define a function declare a constant value in the same way as let. In this case, it will be an object and print through console called main function. We have two different values with the same name, but be careful, constant keyword doesn't mean constant values. We cannot update values, array, or objects directly. If we try to redeclare a variable, we cannot do that, but we can modify the elements of an array and change the properties of an object. For instance, in this globally scoped variable, we can add elements to the array. It's totally valid. And in the function, if we define another property to the object, it also works. So constant is not an immutable array or object. They are only immutable for primitive values. If you want to transform constant arrays or objects into immutable objects, you can do it with this function called object.freeze, which we pass the constant as an argument. When we call this object.freeze for arrays, we have an uncut type error. Let me copy the same line of code. If we apply to objects, let me comment out this line. If we apply to objects, it's a little different because it doesn't throw any exception, but the object remains immutable. We try to add age property, but we cannot do that when using this object.freeze because we transform the constant value into an immutable object. And finally, the use of var is deprecated in JavaScript, so you should avoid using it in your code. The second tip is that you can declare variables in a single statement. For instance, it's y and z values defined in a single statement, and by printing the values, we have the correct mapping for this single statement. Okay, you can do this definition for let, var, constant variables.